It says here that the last thing we saw is that he has to wash the entrails. Okay, so the washing of the entrails, that's a very important act. He also said here, Ketsa Menachin and Nachrachach Behema. He exposes the innards. And how does he wash them? Keres Medichinota Veda Medichin Kol Circle. You wash it off. By the way, how they used to wash things, they had a water supply in the base of Mikdash. They had spring water coming to the base of Mikdash. It was basically constantly flowing. I assume that the future temple will have electric fixtures and running water and plumbing, more modern senses for these things. We don't need to use the systems they used to use. We'll have much more advanced, and just an aqueduct that's channeling water and all that. But it was a good thing. They had water flowing, and sometimes you gathered water from a flowing place and you put it into a vessel and you poured over it. Now they could just use a sink, which is something that's quite new. And it says here, Ravayim, the innards, he has to wash at least 3 times. He washes on these marble tables that are between the pillars. The pillars hold up the structures that are above them. So you look at the general picture of the open Azara, you don't see so many pillars, but there are places underneath that at the edges that are underneath there are pillars between them. And then it says here, Natal Dasakin, he took the knife, not the is this, but it says the knife, he means the knife that he's using to cut the korban to pieces. Sometimes the kind that can cut sinew and bones. It's not something about the shechita knife. Shechita knife, if you want to ruin your shechita knife, use it to then cut the animal to various pieces. It's a good way to make sure your shechita knife will have begam in it. So you don't use the same knife. You ever seen a shechita knife? There's a cleaver used to hack things. There's certain knives that are serrated, used to cut certain ways. A shechita knife is not a cleaver and it's not a serrated knife, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not the same. The shechita is just long and smooth. And it says here, he separates the lung from it's called the liver. The etzba kaved min hakaved. The etzba kaved is the protrusion there. It's not the same exact thing, but they called it the finger because that's what it looks like. I'm sure you can find online the exact term for this thing. Usually a very scientific sounding term, like a duodenum or something like that. But he should leave the kaved in its place within the animal's abdomen. Okay. And then he's to pierce the chazeh. What does it mean to pierce the chazeh? Hold on a second. Let's stop the share. No, I want to continue sharing. Okay. It says here that he's supposed to pierce it, and he gives it to someone else. Why would he pierce it? It doesn't mean to actually pierce through it. It says here that he would just cut around it. Okay. He cut it away from the cavity, the chest cavity. Okay. And he gives it to someone else. He has to disconnect it, so he gives his other Kohen to hold. Okay. And then he would go up to the Dofan Yemeni. Why is he going up? Because the animal's hanging down from its hind legs. Okay. The abdomen's in front of us, straight in front of us, and the hind legs are up. So it means he's cut off basically the lower parts of the animal. The head came off first, remember? So now he's getting there, and he goes to the right side, the side of the animal, assuming it's a bull. You have shidra or shizra. And what's the difference? Shizra is the more Hebrew form. Remember, when you have these types of words, the Aramaic tends to have dalid, tet, and tuf. Okay, whereas Hebrew has, instead of dalid, zayin. So it's the fricative form becomes shiv, and then just the zayin, and the tuf becomes a shin. So tlat becomes shalosh, and other examples. And with a tet in Hebrew, like kaita becomes a sadi in Hebrew. Tet in Aramaic becomes a sadi in Aramaic. And there's a close grammatical relation and a good explanation according to linguistics why that's the case. So the shidra, I don't think is a biblical word necessarily. So it comes from the Aramaic. So the question is, do you leave it with a dalid, like you find in certain editions over here, or do you change it to a zayin, more Hebrew form? So all the ones we see in front of us have it with the zayin, I think, but a few editions have it with the dalid. And by the way, I think it's the modern Hebrew word also, shidra. Okay, v'lo yiga b'shidra, but you shouldn't touch it. Okay, goes along, cuts along, but he doesn't touch it. Achu magil state slot rakot until he gets the two softer ribs. Then he cuts off this side, and the liver, which had not been disconnected from the chest cavity or the abdominal cavity, goes along with it. This is actually quite heavy. A side of beef is a very heavy thing. Okay. Balo la geira. He gets to the geira, which I said, oi. The geira is, I think, the neck area. Okay. Hineach ba state slope mikan state slope mikan. Part of the neck is still attached there at the neck. You have two ribs on this side, two ribs on that side. Most of the ribs are already gone, but I guess the top two ribs on each side, right, are still there. He cuts it and cuts that, gives it to someone else, a different coin to hold. And this has the kaneh, which is the windpipe, and the heart and the lung attached to it. One big, cardiovascular part of the system. He gets to the left side of the animal. The two lowest ribs, the two uppermost ribs are still attached to it. And then he put them into its friend. What does that mean? It's like he folds it over. I don't know how he does that, technically speaking. Hold on 1 second. I make myself a note. You just leave it there. Okay. Leave that part alone. Nimtza maniach what? B'shtei adifanot arba tzlaot bazo v'arba bazo. The two sides, each one has two ribs. Two uppermost ribs, the right, left. Remember, the ribs are not connected at those points. They'll go fully across. Okay. He cuts that part off, gives it to someone else. The spine goes with one of those. The spinal cord goes with one of them, or actually it means like the vertebrae. And the tchol, which is the spleen, also is still attached to that. When you cut open any animal, including humans, it's very interesting. All these animals look, how God created it. All these animals look, I guess, symmetrical, right? Da Vinci style. There's very fine symmetry on the outside. But if you open up the chest cavity, you find that there's very little symmetry on the inside. Yes, the lungs are basically symmetrical, and the kidneys are also. But the heart is certainly not symmetrical. It's not placed symmetrically, and it doesn't have any form of other symmetry to it. The stomach, the spleen, all the different internal organs are all located. Each one has its own place. They don't have any symmetry to them. The liver is not symmetrical in any way. The small intestine and large intestine are not symmetrical. Neither is the gallbladder. What else isn't symmetrical? The intestine. Everything until you get down back to the, let's say, to the genitals. Before that, the bladder, there's just one bladder, and that's in the middle, and then everything below that. Okay. But it's interesting. And snakes, think like, where does a snake have all its internal organs? So God created the snake that it's a long chain of organs, but all the organs are there. Just each of them are positioned. But you look at the snake, it just looks like one long line. But a snake is very highly, I guess, non-symmetrical on the inside. Kalvachomer. So it's very interesting how you do this. You open this up, so certain organs get taken with certain pieces on this side. So this one takes the even the kaneh, the windpipe, is not directly down the middle of the neck. In all animals, have you studied anatomy, got to dissect the thing, you look at a human neck. There's certain blood vessels are going up, certain blood vessels are going down. There's the food pipe, the windpipe, like the major blood vessels. The only thing that's like symmetrical in and of itself is the spinal cord within the vertebrae. Everything else has its location in the neck. Like, because I'll say sometimes you want to lean to one side because of the way your windpipe and food pipe are oriented. It's not perfectly symmetrical. It's not like that with the animal either. Yeah. Okay. Balola okets. What's the oket? Okets? That's the tushy. Okay. That's where its tail comes out. He cuts that part off. He gives it okets is he says the hind side. Okay, the back side. And also the aliyah. What's an aliyah? The aliyah exists in sheep. Sheep have a large fatty tail. Okay. Other animals just have a little wispy of nothing of a tail. Okay, so if there's a sheep, it has an aliyah. And what goes with it, the etzba of the kaved, that protrusion from the liver, and the two kidneys. The animals have kidneys. Natal the regel asmalit. Regel in an animal means, well, those have four feet. Arba raglayim. No, the regel refers to the hind feet. So it's the left hind foot, and he gives it to someone else. This is how they would first skin and then dissect any burnt offering of a behemoth. What burnt offering is behemoth? Male, sheep, goats, or cows. This is what it says in the Torah, cut it into its various pieces. Make sense? Mm-hmm. So there's a note over here that we'll read it there, that maybe this isn't so clear as the Rambam said. Maybe it's not a deraisa necessarily. We'll read on. So how many people take the Evarim to the kevesh? How many kohanim do you need? Because you can't obviously pick up an entire bull, so now it's been cut into pieces. So you're gonna have a parade of kohanim with various pieces of the bull going up to the altar and literally throwing like the last time, throwing these pieces onto the fire. So how does that work? It says, if this came from the flock, means types of sheep are relatively small, it'll take 6 kohanim. Harishon barosh of a regel. The first kohen's carrying the head and the hind leg. Harosh bimino, the chotmo klape zroo, the karnav ben etzbotav. Okay, the head is in his right hand. The animal's nose should be toward the kohen's forearms. The karnav ben etzbotav, and the animal's horns are between the kohen's fingers. So figure it out. Have you ever held an animal head? Ever held a bull head? Grab the bull by the horns? Yeah.
So it's facing this. It's like a football.
Okay. Uveid shchita l'mala v'apeder aleha. The place where he actually cut the shchita, the incision in the neck, that should be face up, right? V'apeder aleha. But you don't just see a bloody cross section of the neck. Instead, that's the peder, which said there's this large fatty section taken right out of the abdomen. The covering of everything on the abdomen, that's put over it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like the top of its head is actually
down. Yeah.
Yeah. So
look, this is the animal's head. It looks like this. Animal looks like this. This is where its snout would be, let's say.
Yeah.
And this is where a base of shchita would be.
Yeah.
It cuts it there, and then so it's basically like that. Okay? Yeah, so the base of shchita is up, and it's covered with the sheet of fat. And apparently that looks appealing. That's a way of serving fancy food.
Have the horns on either side of your hand.
Yeah. And there's a proper way to carry it, by the way, also. Very interesting. Okay. Hold on a second.
Might be the proper. It might be the easiest way to actually balance it and carry it.
Now, we just said the rosh and the regel, but there's 2 back feet. So which hind foot is this? It means the right one. Okay. Regel shel yamin bismolo, uveit orah lachutz. And the left leg is in his left, the animal's right leg is in the kohen's left hand, and its skin area is to the outside. What is it? It's beit or relachutz. That's the part where they started the incision, where they started skinning the thing. Remember, you have to start basically above the hoof, like where does the skin start? And it's actually useful. So there's a place where they started cutting, and that's where the skinning began. That's called the beit ora. Was really when the animal was alive, it was all covered in skin.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. Next. Hasheni b'shtei yadayim. The next kohen carries the 2 front legs. Okay. Shel yamin bimino v'shel smol b'smolo. His right hand holds the animal's right leg. Left hand is the animal's left leg. And of course, toward the outside is the place where the incision was made in order to skin the animal. Hashlishi ba'oketz uvaregel. The third person's carrying the hind quarters, as they call it, and the other hind foot, which in this case would be the left one. Ha'oketz bimino. The oketz is in his right hand, and the aliyah midul delet beiretz botav. And the fat tail should be hanging down between where his fingers are. That's bakaved shtef leotimo. And we said this etzba of the kaved, and the 2 kidneys are along with this section. The regel shel smol b'smolo, and the kohen carries in his left hand the left hind leg. And of course, the incision area where the skinning happened, that's toward the outside, that's exposed. Haravi'i bechazeh uvagira. The next Kohen carries the breast and the neck. Echazeh bimino, the breast in his right hand, vagira b'shmol, the neck in his left, utzlaotel ben etzbotov, and the ribs are between his fingers. I want to see a picture. I've never seen. Machon Mamre has all these nice pictures of these things. I haven't seen actual pictures of it. And even the Chulin book, which shows you how to dissect one of these animals, it doesn't show you, theoretically speaking, how the Kohanim would carry it around. So that's strange. When they do Tirgul Korban Pesach, none of this is done with the Korban Pesach, because a Korban Pesach, all they do is throw on, some fats and some blood and some entrails, and all these large sections. The animal isn't even cut into sections. You're not supposed to break its bones. You're basically supposed to roast it whole.
Right.
So, and you get to eat it. So none of this would be done at Tirgul Korban Pesach. So I want to see this done, get an idea of this. Interesting to see. By the way, you can understand why it is, like Rabbi Rabinovich said, the Kohanim on duty, their clothing basically becomes chad pami. They're wearing flimsy linens, and it's impossible that they don't get bloody from this. So, and there's no such thing as laundering Kohanic clothes that got dirty. They're basically single use, like scrubs, hospital scrubs, basically. Okay. Chamishi b'shtei difonot. The fifth Kohen holds the two sides of the animal. Shel yamin bimino, the right one is right hand. V'shel smol bismolo, uvei doron lachutz, and the place of the decision should be to the outside. Hashishi, the sixth Kohen, b'kravayim nitunim b'vazech. Okay, he has the entrails in one of those, what's called a ciborium, a decorative cup. Okay, in all sorts of rituals. There's no way describing the Torah how to make this ritual cup bowl-like structure. It says that that's where they put the frankincense. They had two of these cups on the shulchan, for example, and other things are put into these. So the only times you see these things actually in practice is lahavdil, unfortunately, in the church, where they use these to hold items. So you can see they have a picture earlier in the book. It's basically saying they took from online, and the way people are either Machon Mikdash are making these things, or Catholics are making these things. Okay? Just a large decorative bowl cup. Not a bowl, it's not a cup, and it has a stand. Okay, so that's what they'd use to carry these things. And where was I? Because to hold it in the entrails. Why? All the other parts of the animal that they're doing basically have bone, right? They have their form. But if you just take the kravayim, it gets all over the place, so you need to put in a bowl. And the kra'ayim, those are the bottom parts of the legs, bottom bones of the legs. If I'm not mistaken, let's just confirm that. Made a note here. I'm going to use my own thing. Yeah, okay. Are put on top of them. And by the way, this is referring to if it's a lamb or a goat. Listen to aisle from a kevis or an aze. Aze stays small. The biggest goat you get is a small thing. Kevis is a sheep or a lamb. So it's usually that's when it's younger. By the time it becomes a ram, it's larger. Rams are bigger than goats. Full-grown bully goat is not that big, right? But a fully grown ram, it's not a bull, but it's still the hemadaka, but it's considerably bigger. Molichina kravaim shnayim. So now you have two people bringing it. The solet, that's basically the cream of wheat that we saw how they make solet of the meal offering is in one hand, and the wine for this offering, the libation, that's in the other hand. If you had an aisle, because it's an aisle has what's the rule? Shnei esronim and a shlishita of him. Says for if a bowl you have 3 esronot or esronim or asirita ifa, they're all the same thing. 3 esronim of flour, and isaron we said was basically about a full isaron was I think 4 liters of flour or so. Okay, it says in the back there. I get this confused, or a little bit more than that. But then you have hin. Okay, each hin is about 4 liters, right? So revi'ita hin is basically a liter. How does it go? Remember the ratios. If you have just a keves, right? Just a single keves, a small animal. So you're gonna have one isaron of flour and a revi'i tahin each of wine and oil, and each revi'i tahin is about a liter or so, correct? But if you have a ram, it's going to be 2 esronim, double the flour, and now a shlishi tahin, okay, a shlishi tahin, and of each of wine and oil. So revi'i tahin is basically a liter. This is the equivalent. Shlishi tahin is like 1.3 liters of wine and oil. And if it's a bowl, you're going to have 3 esronim of flour and half a hin of wine and half a hin of oil, which is basically equivalent of 2 liters each of wine and oil. So it's a lot more. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It fits with what we were saying before. So there's a lot of flour, a lot of oil. Basically, if you have an aisle being offered, so aside from the fact that you have a little bit larger parts, you have more entrails in there. So you need 2 guys bringing it. You'll need 2 more kohanim to bring more. You'll need more kohanim to bring the wine and the oil. Okay. These bottles, by the way, have been shrunk. This is basically a revi'i tahin. It's about a revi'i tahin in here. So they brought a bottle of wine like this and a bottle of oil like this for the mincha of a keves. Okay, so minchas nesachim, because you have to bring flour. You have to bring an isaron of flour, which is shir challah. Okay, isaron is a shir challah. Basically, you bring a keves, you bring enough flour that you'd have to do if you want to take challah from it in the home. And the oil is about a liter of oil, and the wine is about a liter of wine. That's how it works out. By the way, when we see that, last week's parsha says it many times over. Okay. Next, nimseita lamed shakeves o ha'ez. Therefore, you see that if you have just a lamb or a goat, mulchinoto oto shmona lemizbeach, it's brought to the mizbeach by how many people? 8 people, 8 kohanim. The aisle mulchinoto achadasar. If you have an aisle, you're going to need 11 men. Same breakdown of the pieces, but you're going to have one more guy in the kravayim and one more guy each for the wine and oil. Hashor mulchinoto esrim v'arba. If you had a bull as a burnt offering, so do your math, you'd basically need 24 kohanim to do this. Hold on 1 second. He's sending me messages. No. Okay. Harishon molichet harosh. Okay. The first one brings the head. Hasheni v'ashlishi molichin haregel shel yamin. Kohanim numbers 2 and 3 take the right hind leg. Haravi v'chamishi molichin to oketz. Kohanim numbers 4 and 5 take the hind quarters up to the mizbeach. Small. These 2, number 6 and 7, take the back left leg. The 8th takes the breast. The neck area takes 3 kohanim. Those are kohanim's number 9, 10, 11. The 2 front legs with two kohanim. The 2 sides, also done by 2 kohanim. The kravayim, the entrails, 3 men to take the entrails, 3 men to take the wine and the oil. Right? There's 3 liters of wine and oil each. Hare esrim varba. So that's 24 kohanim. I think the easiest job is just to take a liter of wine and a liter of oil. It's not that heavy. What weighs more? A liter of wine, a liter of oil, or a liter of oil? So we saw this a few months ago. There's a pop quiz. Turns out wine is less dense than water. Even though wine has more stuff dissolved in the water, when you dissolve, you take sugar and salt and mix into the water, a liter of water. You've just increased the weight of the water, but not the volume of the water. So it's denser than water. Wine has other stuff in it. It's mostly water, but has other stuff dissolved in it. But wine also has alcohol. And alcohol is less dense than water. It's 14.5% alcohol about. So that lowers its density, as the Rambam points this out. We saw in the Parish of Mishneh, the Rambam said, a revius of wine weighs less than a revius of water. So water is the heaviest, wine is lighter than water, and oil is lighter than wine. When you mix them, the oil flows to the top. Okay. It's telling us that 2 men take 1 piece. Why don't you just divide it in 2? You have 2 men carrying it. Why don't you chop it in 2? You don't have a knife? Okay. It says by its pieces. You can't cut the pieces smaller than this. There's a very prescribed, there's a highly legislated, prescribed way to how to cut the korban. So you have to do it that way. Good. By the way, I'm talking about a burnt offering of the community. What's a burnt offering to the community? The korbanos, tzmidim and musafim, things like that. Well, olada yachid. If you have an individual who's brought a burnt offering, this fellow is dictating, or maybe the Kohanim decide. I don't know. It says ratzu. The Kohanim decide. It's just easier. They're going to cut less pieces or cut into more pieces. They may do so. So there's a note here from the Ravid. Let's see. Do we see the Ravid there? I don't see where the Ravid is on my page. Read it to you. The Ravid says this in his parish, the Torah's Kohanim. Chilku ashor l'chalakim rabim yoter. No, they could cut the bull into more than these 24 sections, whatever it is. You could actually cut the bull smaller if you really want to. And the Meiri agrees with him. The Chain Chalukat of Rima Shonim, but sort of a car, Lo Nesta Dafka Lefia Chalukat Shnem Rabba Mishnah. The Rama just quoted the Mishnah. But these other Rishonim say, no, it didn't have to be that way. It's just an example in the Mishnah. Okay. Ela Kafia Minag Akatsavim. That's how the butchers used to do it. But if there's a different minhag katsavim, the butchers have a different minhag, so let them do it. The Rambam is just describing saying they did, but it doesn't. It's not required. Okay, I mentioned this earlier, just before. There's not. I disagree with that. You have to cut it up. Very interesting. So that's another thing. Is the hakra. The Rambam would say you have to do it this way. L'chatchila. And the Ravid and the Meiri say, no, come with a different system. I don't know how do the butchers do it nowadays. Nowadays, it used to be, I don't know, you've ever seen this? It used to be you went to the shuk, and they'd have, the butcher slaughtered a bull today, and people are coming over the course of the day and taking pieces of it. Some steaks part cost more, some other parts cost less. Or you could bring your chicken to the shaychet, and he would do it for you right then and there. And it was the woman's job to take the chicken home and skin and feather it or whatever it is, and salt and everything. It used to be you were much more hands-on with your meat. So it's kind of scary actually. So I wonder what the minhag is now. Nowadays, have you ever seen the side of beef in real life, hanging on a pole or in the? Okay, so you've never been to a meat locker before. Why have you not been to a meat locker? Okay, so I have. That's how they salt in Queens when they're still doing the salting at the butcher shop at Brock's. So I remember back in 2006 going with other guys to see how they did it one Friday morning. So they take a whole side of beef, they had it soaking in this basin for like an hour, and then they just throw it onto the perforated stainless steel table. I have a big guy do it, the big workers. Many of them are not Jewish working there, but there's the one Jewish guy who's basically trained them all. They take the meat out, they rinse it off, they throw it onto the table, they throw on large quantities of the kosher salt, then they hang it on the hook right in the middle of the big refrigerated room, and it starts dripping blood. And then it drips out all the blood and the stuff comes off, and they hose it down. And then they bring it to the other room where there's stainless steel tables, all clean and everything, and they take out their knives, and each guy gets his own side, and he starts hacking it and cutting it just perfectly and then it goes into the conveyor belt, and it gets covered with saran wrap in the styrofoam tray, and it goes through the machine and it weighs it and everything, and it pops out into the refrigerator on the store side, all nice and clean and hygienic. Miracle of modern technology. It used to not be that way, of course. So the Beis Hamikdash was similar, by the way. It looks similar to a slaughterhouse. I'm sure there's another way that the Torah is not politically correct and certainly not woke. Nowadays, one of the bigger crimes that they have is that eating meat is just evil and needs to be replaced with other stuff. Sounds pretty sinister. Okay, so there. Olasa Oaf. What is an Olasa Oaf? Why is an Olasa Oaf special? There's only two types of birds offered in the temple, even though in the olden days, basically most birds in the world are kosher. It's only the birds that are specifically said in the Torah don't eat these birds. And what they all have in common, the Torah doesn't say the simanim of non-kosher birds. The Torah says don't eat the paris and the oznion and the nesher and all these. And Chazal said, yeah, these are basically predatory or scavenger birds. But the regular birds, how they say look at the feet. Okay, so if it has kind that could grab prey, so those are the type of non-kosher birds. But the gentle birds, like the pigeons and the sparrows and the chickens, So they don't really have grabbing feet. And remember, chickens could barely fly. They say when we domesticated chickens, we made them that they can't fly.
Probably.
Chazal, by Chazal's times, chicken was the food of choice for Jewish people, and it was basically symbiotic. It was fully domesticated. It's a standard. We mentioned the eggs of Chazal. When Chazal talk about stam an egg, it's talking about a chicken egg, because Jews have been living with and eating chickens for basically since biblical times. Okay, but the Torah said specifically only two types of birds. What is a sparrow? A sparrow is what's called a dror. Tzipor dror. It's smaller than a pigeon or a dove, and it's also hard to catch. It's not mekabil marut. Whereas pigeons and doves, you can set up a bird bath for them. You set up a dove cote for them, and they'll love it. They'll put up a nest there. They want a nest right on your roof if they could. So if you give a specific place for them to build nests, you build, just on top of a ladder, you build a dove cote. They'll go in there. They'll want to go there. Okay, so they're highly domesticatable. Ola sa'of ketzadaita naseit. How are they doing also? Ola la kevesh ufonela sovev. The Kohen takes the bird, goes up the ramp, and turns right at the Sovev. Sovev, as we said, was accessed by a secondary ramp halfway up the original ramp. And he's basically going to the halfway side of the Mizbeach. There's the Sovev is, how wide is the Sovev? This protrusion at the Mizbeach. We had we had a schematic, how to build the Mizbeach. Remember in like the third parak over here? Do you remember this? So here it shows, this is the secondary ramp. Where exactly the ramp starts to get to the Sovev depends on which artist is drawing this. So he starts going up and he gets to the Sovev, like halfway up the Mizbeach. Now it's a pretty precipitous place to be standing. It's only like 5 tefachim wide there for him to stand. Okay. So an amma would be 6 tefachim, 48 centimeters. Here he's basically got 30 centimeters to stand there, which isn't that wide at all. So Kohen should be careful. But then again, he's only, how high up is he? He's basically 30, he's 35 tefachim up. Okay. So that's times 8 centimeters. He's like 3 meters up there. Okay. He's basically standing on a ledge above everybody else, but he's not at the top of the Mizbeach. So the Kohen's supposed to go to the Sovev there. He goes up there and makes a right. All right, makes a right over there. Uvalo lekeren dromit mizrachi. He's now at the southeast corner. Sham at Rosh Mimul Arpo. Rosha Mimul Arpo. And there he performs the Malika with the backside of the neck. The Oref is the backside. Okay. Now, Limlok is a unique word, means he pops it with his fingernail. The Rambam doesn't say which finger he uses here. You grew up thinking like I did. That means he just holds the bird basically like this. This is incorrect, by the way. We even have a picture here. You think he grabs the bird by its body with the face this way, and he just pops it, sticks his thumb in there. That's not how you do it. Okay? It doesn't necessarily even have to be the thumb. Rambam's going to say it explicitly. Okay? It might even be the index finger of the other hand. Hold it in the left hand, the pop of the right. You'll see the Rambam actually describes what to do. So he does a malika. Malika is the exclusion of shchita. Shchita is done on the front side with a smooth knife moving back and forth. And nechira just means kill the thing. Goyim don't have, like, sometimes, how do they work it? In the olden days, if you had a farmer who wants to slaughter his chicken or a cow or a pig even, how does he slaughter them? He takes an axe and he just decapitates them, right? Quick axe. So that's not allowed in the Torah. That's obviously not a shechita. That's, that makes them in the vela. But this is a unique way. I haven't seen Malika. I don't know. Perhaps maybe someone who knows anthropology and archaeology could tell me. Did Goyim ever have another way to slaughter birds that they did this? I don't know. Okay, so he does a Malika right there. And Mavdil. What does Mavdil mean? First, you have to say, what is Mavdil? He basically splits it in half. But for Chatas, it says Lo Yavdil. For the Ola, it's Dafka Mavdil. See that? Mavdil. So once again, like I said, the pasuk says specifically Ola Mavdil, Chatas not Mavdil. I'll read you something he says here. Ladasa Rambam, Avdal hi afrada harosh me'aguf legamre. Okay? It means that the Malika ends up decapitating the bird entirely. Take off its head. Okay. Das Rashi Avdali Chituch Shnei Simonim Shelo Of. It means make sure to snap the two simonim. We said normally when a person does shchita, he wants the knife to cut through the windpipe and the food pipe. So in this case, it means go completely through the windpipe and the food pipe. He's not talking about an incision down the middle along the spine or along the abdomen of the animal. Okay. It means take the head, at least according to Rambam, complete the malika. Okay. Start from the back and go all the way through. A Kohen needs a fingernail to do this, by the way. It's very difficult. So I thought I saw in the YouTube videos a fellow who learns all these halachas. He lives out in the Jordan Valley, and he was supposed to display this, but his video of him supposedly displaying malika, as far as I could see, is just him talking about it, but he never actually picked up a bird and did it. So I have yet to see such a thing. Remember, Kohanim are going to have to practice doing this. They can't just go into the base of Mikdash and start doing it, if they don't have any practice. So that means a lot of birds are going to have to die. Why? If you want to learn shechita and you do it right, you practice the shechita, your animal will be kosher if you did it right. If you do malika to a dove or a pigeon outside the temple just because you're learning how to do malika, you've just created a dead bird. Okay, it doesn't. There's no recovery from that. You're not going to be able to eat it. Okay, so as a kohen eat the chatas, malika was done on the chatas, but the kohen does eat that. Special dispensation outside the base of mikdash. A kohen, if he wants to eat any form of fowl or bird, he has to do a proper shechita with a shechita implement, which is not necessarily a knife. It could be anything that's smooth. You could use a reed or glass or ceramics, whatever's sharpest. So the minhag is we use a knife, but for mila and shechita, it doesn't have to be metal. Okay. Dam harosh v'dam haguf al kir mizbeach. And then he squeezes out the blood of the head and of the rest of the body onto the wall of the mizbeach. Remember, he's at the southeast corner. Lamala min achut sheba emsa mizbeach, and it's above that red line, which is basically near his feet or so. He's already well above, he's basically halfway up the mizbeach. So he puts it. The blood of this animal has to be somewhere above the red line. If he only squeezes out the blood of the head, so it's a puzzle. You have to squeeze out the blood of the body also. Now, it says b'matzeh, like I said, squeeze it out, but some have sometimes just like a sprinkling. And its blood shall be squeezed out. Okay, mamish, push it against it. Okay, at least the Ram has. Does Makbili mention something else?
There's a picture.
Whether they have a picture? Yeah.
Or an illustration
Of what? Of malika?
of pressing the neck against the.
Okay, fine. Yeah, so you gotta get the blood up. And limtzotz says here mimatzeh. This shorish is mem tzadi hey, obviously. Okay, it's not the same shorish as matzah. Matzah, the shorish is nun tzadi hey. So sucking is mem tzadi tzadi. So this means squeeze out the blood, not suck out the blood. Okay. I think we'll stop here now because it's like 9:30, and we'll end with a prayer that we actually get to have firsthand experience keeping these halachas, because it's unfortunate that many of us don't have experience with them. So there you go.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.